You are watching KOCT's North County Roundtable. On this edition, our guests include Executive Director of the Association of Cannabis Professionals, Dallin, San Diego Farm Bureau and Nagata Brothers Farms President, Neil Nagata, President of Tom Shepard and Associates, Tom Shepard.
Welcome to KOCT's North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Alison St, and today we'll be speaking with longtime political consultant Tom Shepard about what is probably the most significant change to our voting system here locally in decades, the shift away from citywide elections to district elections and what it could mean for our community. We'll also have San Diego Farm Bureau President Neil Nagata to discuss his position on the proposed SOAR ballot initiative in Oceanside, that's short for Save Open Spaces and Agriculture. But first, we'll talk about another big change here in California that's under much discussion in Oceanside, whether to regulate the cannabis industry, now that marijuana is legal in the state, or whether to maintain the current bans. And our first guest is Dallin, who is the Executive Director of the Association of Cannabis Professionals. Thanks so much for joining us, Dallin.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Start off by telling us, what is the Association of Cannabis Professionals?
Yeah, so quick 20-second elevator speech. So we're a trade association first and foremost. We also do a lot of lobbying advocacy work in San Diego County, and we do a lot of other events as well that help basically sustain and bring more attention to our cause.
So there's a lot of confusion, I think, around the change in the law that resulted from Prop 64 that many people voted for back in 2016. Can you just summarize for us what is legal and what is not at this point?
Well, that's a little complicated, but I mean, generally, everybody can carry up to an ounce of cannabis on them at all time, or whenever they like. The biggest change, of course, is the ability to buy and sell recreational marijuana. Before January 1st, it was strictly for medicinal purposes, and you had to get a doctor's recommendation. Now, anybody with an ID can go into any of the recreational retail locations in the city of San Diego as of now.
So now, how did the state law dovetail with local laws? Because here in Oceanside, there's a big debate as to about how the industry should be regulated. We know that you can grow 6 plants in your house legally, that's right, but what about dispensaries? What about growing? How does the local and the state law dovetail?
So the big thing about the state law is that there has to be a supply chain from seed to sale is what we call it. So there has to be a licensed cultivator that would then be selling to a licensed retailer. If they're going to be making any types of products, so oils or edibles or anything like that, it has to go through a licensed manufacturer. So the biggest thing in all of that is there has to be a licensed cultivator, then to a manufacturer. It has to be tested, go to a distributor. The distributor is responsible for making sure that everything is tested, and then from there it goes to your retail locations. Can
you do that anywhere in San Diego County right now?
The only place that it actually has open retail locations is the city of San Diego. They have about 12 to 13 that are both good for medicinal and recreational. In the county, in the unincorporated areas, there's four medicinal only locations available. Every other municipality in the county does not have anything open right now that are legal and licensed. La Mesa and Lemon Grove are the only two that have regulations in place, but they have yet to give out any CUPs for that, or conditional use permits.
So Oceanside has this medicinal marijuana ad hoc committee that has been debating for some time as to whether to regulate the industry, but just for medicinal marijuana. So legally speaking, what is the difference? I mean, now under state law, recreational marijuana is legal, but could Oceanside just regulate for medicinal marijuana?
They could. They absolutely could. That's a big part of Prop 64 and all of the regulations in the state is they give a lot of the local municipalities the autonomy to come up with their own ordinances or their own regulations. So if a city does want to stick with medical, hey, that's all right. That's up to them. But if they're really looking at revenue from these operations that they can then put back into infrastructure, public safety, education, anything like that. The taxes that you can put on those is better served under a recreational market than medicinal.
Well, let's talk a bit more about that, because I think, money is one of the issues that might encourage some of our elected officials to go for it, because there's potentially a lot of profit for the cities if they said, yes, we will regulate this.
Yes.
But if it's only medicinal marijuana, how much revenue would a city like Oceanside earn?
So the general revenue that they'd get from that is on the sales tax. What we're trying not to do as a state from an industry perspective is to put too many taxes on medicinal. The whole purpose of this industry, from the beginning, was for medical patients. And so what we don't want to happen is for their medicine to be taxed, so much that they can't afford it anymore, because it does give a lot of people the relief and help that they need. If you really want to bring in revenue and everything like that, it's better served taxing recreational. We want to protect medical patients as much as we can. At the same time, though, a lot of cities might be taking that ability to tax a little bit too far, and are kind of if you have too high of taxes and not enough supply, then all of that business is going to be going to the black market.
Well, so there's a lot of things to think about here, aren't there? Because, so if you stick with medicinal, which is what Oceanside is doing right now, there's not the potential of a large amount of tax revenue for the city. The state might get some, but not the city, right? However, you're talking about the black market. I mean, the arguments against it in many cases are that this will not be good for public safety, that, we have a lot of problems of drug addiction, drug problems. It could affect our law enforcement, it could affect our youth. How do you tackle those arguments?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it could impact it, but that is not what we've seen from many of the licensed retailers that are currently operating in the county right now. For example, Outliers Collective, they've had one instance in their existence that there was any type of attempted break-in or anything like that.
What's that, Outliers Collective?
Outliers Collective is in the unincorporated area of El Cajon. And what the benefit is of this is, from a public safety standpoint, if there is an issue, they can call the police, and the police can actually come and do their job. If it's a black market operator, then they're going to try and deal with it themselves, because they cannot call the police because there's issues there. And so when it comes to public safety, I think that we've actually seen the exact opposite happen. The fact that all the ones here in the county have to have a 24-hour-a-day armed guard there. What we've heard from a lot of these store owners around these places is that armed guard basically is providing security for the entire complex if it's located in a complex. And so they actually kind of like that. There's actually been a decrease in crime in a lot of these areas as they've opened up. Now, when it comes to youth use, this is a big, one of my favorite topics on this, is because so much of our opposition it goes around touting that youth rates are going to rise. There was a report actually last September, I think it was in the Washington Post, that said that drug use among teens is actually at its lowest point since 1996. When it comes to youth use, a licensed storefront is not going to sell to an underage person, because they've spent, a lot of these locations have to put in about $250,000 to open up, to get their permit. Why would you risk any of that to sell to somebody for a quick buck that's under the age? That just doesn't make any sense. And so a lot of them are trying to dot all their I's and cross all their T's to make sure that they are above the law so they can keep their permit, because there are so few of these out there. Why would you risk that? And I think that right now we're halfway through February, and so much of the opposition up to this point has been touting this, and the sky hasn't fallen. We're not seeing an exorbitant amount of youth just in the streets smoking cannabis. Nothing has really changed, and I think that is what we've seen in most places, is just nothing's changed. It's just like any other industry. Teens aren't getting a hold of it, at any higher rates than like they would getting into their parents' alcohol cabinet.
And you're talking about the city of San Diego, where it has been regulated, right? I mean, why shouldn't people from Oceanside just drive down and get it?
I mean, if you want to, go for it. But I mean, we're looking at this from a community standpoint, and that San Diego is kind of its own little island down here, especially because we have a federal checkpoint going north on the 5 and east on the 8. And so those, because it's still federally illegal, create some problems when it comes to bringing product in and out of San Diego.
So even just driving it in your car, you're at risk?
Correct, because it is federally illegal. And so whether or not they do anything or prosecute or anything like that, I don't think anybody wants to take that risk, but they can. They can.
Well, we did hear Jeff Sessions talking about possibly coming in a little bit heavier than we were expecting with the federal law. This was about a month ago. Are you expecting, are any of the dispensaries worried about federal enforcement getting heavier than they were hoping? Yeah,
I think that it's in the back of everyone's heads regarding this, but at the same time, we're not the only ones that have a recreational market right now. I think it's in 6 to 8 places at this point. Washington, Oregon, and Colorado have a couple years on us when it comes to recreational market. So there is a fear that they could do something if they really wanted to. But I think the reality is when Jeff Sessions made that announcement, he actually got a lot of pushback from his own party. So we'll see. So much of the Trump administration during their campaign talked about states' rights and how they really want to advocate for that and wanted to uphold those rights. This would be in a direct opposition of that promise on his campaign. This is purely a states' rights issue right now. We wish that the federal government would take it off the Schedule 1 classification for narcotics. But if they did try and do anything with it, I think they're going to have a lot of lawsuits on their hands in regards to state rights and the 10th Amendment.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about commercial cultivation, because a lot of the farmers in Morrow Hills here in Oceanside would really like to be able to grow it, because they're having trouble making ends meet with the high price of water, and growing marijuana might really help save their industry. But realistically, is it going to be grown in agricultural areas like out in the fields, or is it going to be grown more in warehouses?
A little bit of both. I think that some folks have a preference for outdoor grown cannabis. Some have a preference for indoor or greenhouse. They all kind of can be used for different things too. But I don't think that there's going to be an issue whether it's grown or where it's grown. I think that Oceanside, as you stated, is looking for an opportunity to diversify their revenue streams, and I think it's actually better for the environment if they do so. In that avocados, I think, take 60% more water than it does for the same amount than it does for cannabis. So if they're looking to even sustain their avocado farms, for example, we're not asking, or no one's really asking for them to just wipe out all their infrastructure they have in any of their crops right now and put in cannabis. It would only be for a small fraction of their properties. And so in that small fraction, they could really subsidize the rest of their operations just with the additional revenue they receive.
Wouldn't they need tremendous amount of security to protect the crop if it was outdoors?
They could, but with the additional revenue that they could get from that, then so be it. But we don't know. I think that all of that is still speculation, because we have outdoor grows that are up in Northern California that they have some security and everything, but I think that it can be treated just like any other crop. You don't have people going to their avocado farms right now. Plenty of people love avocados as much as they might cannabis, but they're not breaking in there and stealing a bunch of avocados. So we'll see, but I don't really foresee so much extra security being needed.
Well, supposing that the City Council does not decide to pass this ordinance, is there a chance that there might be an initiative on the ballot? And if so, how might that affect things?
I think so. It's time for it, and it's election season. And if council doesn't want to put something on the ballot, then or doesn't want to pass something on their own, then we'll put something on the ballot. And many of them are up for election, and that's. If they're not going to do what the voters say, then we'll give the voters another opportunity to voice their opinion, on an initiative.
And why should the City Council not just say, well, let's put it on the ballot? Why? Is there any reason why it would be better for them to pass the regulations themselves? Yeah,
so the difference is when a city comes up with their own ordinance, they're able to change that much quicker and, however much they'd like to. When it's passed by a citizen's initiative, it can only really be changed by another citizen's initiative. And so what we don't want to do everywhere is actually have to get this law in place, and then anytime something is wrong, do another citizen's initiative. It's very costly. It takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. So the best thing that these cities can do is, if they want to get ahead of it, is pass their own ordinance. If they want to change anything, they see there's little tweaks they can do, then they can go ahead and do that much easier. So that's the big difference on it. And these city councils are going to have the best idea about what's best for their communities. And so we want to work with communities to make sure they come up with something that's best for them. But if they're not going to defy the will of the voters, which in the county right now, or in November of 16, it passed by 57%. That's a good amount. I mean, I think that's accepted more so than many of the elected officials got elected to in the first place. So
Yes.
if they want to play that, I think it's a delicate balancing act on their part.
In the 30 seconds we have left, I mean, if Oceanside were to pass an ordinance, it would be the first city other than the city of San Diego to allow commercial cultivation, is that right, of medicinal marijuana?
Potentially. Chula Vista is looking to vote on their ordinance this next week. Same thing with Imperial Beach. So, they could. If something happens in those two and Oceanside comes on before then sure.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you very much.
No problem. My pleasure.
Dallin Young of the Association of Cannabis Professionals. So stay with us. We'll be talking about an issue that has many people in Oceanside arguing passionately, a proposed initiative to protect open space and farmland from new development. We'll be speaking with the president of the San Diego Farm Bureau, Neil Nagata, so stay with us.
If back pain is keeping you from doing what you love, we want you to know about the Mazor Robotics Renaissance System, an innovation in spine surgery first offered in San Diego at Tri-City Medical Center. Meet Dr. Payam Moazes. Dr. Moazes is among the most experienced surgeons using the Mazor Robotics Renaissance Guidance System. This system is 99% accurate, requires a shorter hospital stay, is safer and less invasive. Recover faster. Get back to doing what you love. Tri-City Medical Center. Advanced healthcare for you.
The Oceanside Public Library is proud to offer you best-selling and classic ebooks and digital audiobooks, available 24/7 by visiting the library's website. You can browse the collection, borrow with your library card, and enjoy on your computer, tablet, smartphone, or e-reader. Many borrowed ebooks and audiobooks can be enjoyed immediately in your web browser. Titles automatically expire at the end of the lending period. There are no late fees. With hundreds of popular titles to choose from, this collection is guaranteed to have something for everyone. You can enjoy bestsellers and classic literature, stories for kids and teens, and much more anytime, anywhere. All you need is your library card. In addition, the library offers classes to help you get started borrowing ebooks and digital audiobooks with your device. For class information or for more details about ebooks or digital audiobooks, visit our website at oceansidepubliclibrary.org or call us at 760-435-5600.
Oceanside Spectrum is a unique talk show that seeks to shine light on local nonprofit organizations in San Diego's North County. Guests from these nonprofits are interviewed by host Elaine Swan about upcoming events, volunteer opportunities, and much more. Oceanside Spectrum airs Monday through Friday on Channel 18 at 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. If your nonprofit organization would like to promote an upcoming event, attract new members, or share your good works, please call 760-722-4433 or email us at koct@koct.org.
Use motor oil or cocktail of toxins. Dispose carefully, you got lots of options. Never the trash, the drain, or the ground. That's insane and it ain't safe and sound. Oceanside is a zero waste city. Oceanside is a zero waste city. Oceanside is a zero waste city. Oceanside is a zero waste city.
Recycle used oil and filters at certified collection points in Oceanside. For locations, see greenoceanside.org.
Hello, my name is Amber Tervroot, and you're watching KOCT, your community channels. I'm a friend of KOCT, you should be too.
Welcome back to North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Alison St. John, and here joining me now is San Diego Farm Bureau President Neil Nagata. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, start off, you have been working in agriculture in Morrow Hills here in Oceanside for how long?
For my whole life, but our family's owned the property since the 60s. We're third generation, so my father, my grandfather actually came into Oceanside in the late 30s, but my mom was born in Bonsall in the mid-20s, and so my mom's side had been here since 1905, right here in Oceanside. We've been part of Oceanside landscape for the whole time.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about this initiative that people are collecting signatures for. You've probably seen them outside your grocery store. And it's called SOAR, Save Our Open Space and Agricultural Land. And in fact, we will be having a discussion with the people who are in favor of that initiative at some point. But Neil Nagata here, you are part of a coalition, Keep Farming in Oceanside, which has been formed to oppose this initiative, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This is not what it seems to be. It suggests that it's going to save agricultural lands. It really actually hurts agriculture. So farmers. I represent the San Diego County Farm Bureau. I'm currently the president, and our board of directors made a unanimous decision to oppose the SOAR initiative in Oceanside. And the reason is that it actually doesn't help agriculture. It hurts agriculture. We depend on our land values as a significant part of how we borrow money in order to get the capital to farm. And so when something like this comes in, it diminishes the property values. Ventura County has a very similar program, the SOAR program, and it's actually hurt their land values, and some of the farmers I know up there are just having a difficult time making things work for them.
So this is some of the publicity material that your group is putting out, correct? Which is, again, you'll probably see this when you're being lobbied to sign up and put this on the ballot. It says, don't sign the Oceanside SOAR petition. The thing is, though, you know, aren't there some farmers who perhaps are ready to get out of the business now and who are finding it very difficult because of the price of water, and who feel like it would be easier just to sell to developers, that really the time has come to let agriculture go, and so this is what I think people are afraid of, is that there will just, the fields that everybody knows from all these decades in Morrow Hills will disappear and just turn into a field of houses.
So the most important thing to remember about farmland is you actually need farmers to farm it, and they need to be successful. And so all the regulations and all the additional burdens that we have make it more difficult. We compete against Mexico, who pay on an average of about $8 a day, and our hourly wage is over $11. And because there's a shortage of labor, we're actually paying more than that pretty often. And so, you know, if you really want to save the farmer, which is really what you need to do, is not concentrate on the farmland. The farmland will take care of itself. As long as there's farmers, there will be farmland available. If you look into Camp Pendleton, there used to be farmland. And just, you know, probably 10 years ago, there was a big tomato grower that was in there. And it's no longer the case. There's 125,000 acres up just, you know, right next to us, bordered. And you know, there's plenty of farmland available if you really need it. And there's, you know, this actually just hurts the private owner who owns a property that's public land. If they really want to preserve agricultural preserve, they can do that up there, and that won't affect, you know, the people.
Well, there are different ways perhaps to be helping to preserve that land, and one of them, we were just talking about it in the last segment, was to allow farmers to legally grow marijuana. How helpful would that be, do you think, to help keep farming in Oceanside?
So I think any opportunity for markets or crops, or really anything that could be helpful, as long as it's legal, should be allowed. And if that's the case, that may be helpful, but we can overproduce anything, and as long as marijuana is only legal in California, we will overproduce that, and the value, from my understanding, has already decreased by half. And so even though there will be some people who can profit off of it, it's not going to be just a windfall for all the growers up there. We have about 3,500 acres of farmland up in the South Morrow Hills area, and I came and spoke with you in 2013, and we were talking about the sewer and the Oceanside, and actually kind of having a master development plan for our area. And if we could, you know, do something like that, then the group that put this together, they're really trying to stop a development program that is trying to build out some of the land next to farmland. But if we would have a master plan, then we could, you know, solve some of these issues and maybe not be so contentious with our neighbors. We're working with this City of Oceanside, trying to do an ag tourism program. We're working really hard on it, and hopefully we can put something that will kind of enhance our area to make it maybe an ag tourism, maybe a wine destination, maybe a wine and brewery destination. But the SOAR initiative will actually stop any progress. So if I want to grow...
But I'm not sure why the SOAR would stop any progress on that.
Okay, so if you are going to build a structure, you have to have a change of use designation. And what SOAR does is it makes any change of land use, you have to go to the vote of the people.
Right.
And so it would have to be a ballot initiative, and any small business couldn't afford it. It's $50,000 to $75,000 to put a ballot initiative, and it's tough enough to start a business from scratch. And if you were trying to have to go to the city, who would make that investment to try to actually create a business up in our area?
Are you suggesting that a business that would be agritourism, you'd have to go to an initiative?
Yes, absolutely.
Huh.
So what has been qualified so far, there's only 5 uses, and farm stands are one of them. Just very simple, not anything changing the infrastructure, so not widening of roads, not building of buildings. It really is a very limited scope on what was deemed agricultural tourism, and in fact it's not defined by the city.
So do you feel that this agricultural tourism does hold out some potential? How optimistic are you about that initiative?
I think that anything that can help us stay in business, agricultural tourism, the marijuana issue, is real important to try to, we are competing directly. So the regular fruits and vegetables that we have of the past are having a very difficult time. People want their fruit produced locally, but we have a lot of regulations. So the pesticides and all these other issues, there's a new rule that says that we cannot spray within a quarter mile of schools now. And so all these additional burdens just cause it so that it's harder for us to produce the crop. Like I said, when you go to Mexico, you're looking at $8 a day. You don't have those burdens of regulations that you do here, but yet when the produce is brought in, our consumers, they consume it very readily.
Well, paint us a picture of what might happen to Morrow Hills and all that agricultural land if this initiative does pass. The voters are likely to think, well, that's nice. That means we're going to keep our green hills and our rolling fields. Is that what would happen? So
what is allowed right now is 2.5 acre lots. And so really, if anybody wanted to, they could develop a 2.5 acre lot. And as we were talking earlier, the 2.5 acre lot is a large space for a home. And if someone puts some trees on there and they can't afford to water it, they actually let the trees die. And there's many examples up in our South Morrow Hills right now of dead trees, and they're on these 2.5 acre plots. If you're an active agriculturalist, a farmer, you're going to take care of your crop because that's money back to you. So you're going to keep the weeds down, you're going to manicure your crops, you're going to harvest, and you're going to take care of all of that aspects of it because it's your financial business. If you're retired or you're not, really concentrating on it as an income source for you, you just let the trees die. If you don't have enough money to cut them down, you'll just leave them there. And like I said, there are plenty of examples of these dead and dying trees. We just had the fire come through Fallbrook, and that came right up into our area. It burned quite a few houses just on the Fallbrook side, on the county side, but it did get, touched into Oceanside. So it was on its way, and some of those properties that I'm speaking about were threatened, actually.
And so you're suggesting that even if this initiative were to pass, there would not necessarily be guarantee that we would see those hillsides remain green. They might end up by being dead and dying trees.
That's correct. And in fact, the initiative was started off because of a development project, but that development project, by the admission of the person who created the SOAR initiative, knows that this probably will go through anyway. So the development will essentially happen.
That's the North River Farms, which is proposing nearly 1,000 homes.
I don't know what the number is. That really, that's up to the city council, and we have a representative government. So having a representative government really helps us be organized. If we have to go to a vote of the people for every land use change, just think how chaotic it would be. So this also includes open space, and a lot of the open space within the city are homeowners associations' backyards. And if a homeowners association or the Goat Hill wants to put up a restaurant or do something in their area, they'd actually have to go to a vote of the people in order to put that structure up to be a commercial enterprise to do something like that. And that's exactly what I'm saying in the South Morrow Hills. If someone wanted to put up a restaurant or someone wanted to put up a commercial building, hydroponics, a lot of those are being considered in structures. So in physical buildings, if there's a commercial building that's built, that's not going to be allowed by this SOAR initiative unless you go to a vote of the people. So how can someone that's barely making it already add an additional burden of $50,000 to $75,000 to get this in election? And that doesn't include all the materials that you would need to advertise it so that people would know what you're talking about.
I think people who are in favor of this feel like right now it only takes 3 members of the 5-member city council to vote in favor of a development project if that's proposed. And of course a lot of the money for their campaigns comes from developers and probably landowners like farmers, you know. So they feel like that's not a lot of protection for the open space that they treasure. So I want to just ask you, if you were saying there was a better way to protect open space in Oceanside, what would you say that would be?
I'm not exactly sure. I think if you help the farmer stay in business, that is going to preserve agriculture. It's going to do more than what this program will do. This will actually hurt our ability to stay in business. You know, like I said, every burden that we add just it makes it more competitive for Mexico to harm our local agriculture.
And then do you feel like if the initiative gets on the ballot, it's the sort of thing that might be quite popular, I think. So what is your estimate of its chances of passing?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. You know, when you start talking about specific elections and things like that, it becomes quite challenging to know what the aspects are, but it does sound very appealing. If you just take the name, Save Agricultural Resources and Open Space, it sounds very appealing. But if you realize that it actually hurts agriculture, then that's why I'm trying to get out the word and that's why we have this campaign. There's Milano and Company, there's myself, there's several other of the farmers up in the South Morrow Hills that have put together this campaign to try to stop that. But like I said, the San Diego County Farm Bureau, this made up of 50 or so board members. They voted unanimously to oppose the SOAR initiative because it really doesn't help agriculture. And
although there are some smaller farmers in Morrow Hills, I think that would
most
like
of those are retired individuals who decided to move up to South Morrow Hills, have a small orchard or have a little retirement area, and it really isn't a retirement area. South Morrow Hills is an active agricultural producing area. And San Diego County produces about $1.8 billion worth of agriculture. San Diego County Farm Bureau represents 2,200 farms. And so we are kind of the spokesman for agriculture. And if you can't listen to the representative of agriculture telling you that this is a bad initiative, then who do you really go to?
Well, I think the signature gatherers have until March 13th to gather about 13,000 signatures. So they still have a bit of work to go. And I would encourage people who are approached on this initiative to do their homework and think about the issues, because there's obviously 2 sides to this issue.
Yeah, we have a rescission letter. So if anybody has signed it and they see this program and they wish to rescind their signature, on our website, keepfarmingoceanside.org. Okay. And if they could go on there and sign the rescission letter, we sure would appreciate it, because it really does hurt farmers.
Well, Neil, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Giving us your perspective. That's Neil Nagata, who is the San Diego Farm Bureau president. And again, we will be hearing from the people who are in favor of the SOAR initiatives on another program. And stay with us. It's a really radical change in the way that we elect our city council coming up. This year, for the first time, we will join many other cities to vote for council members by district, not to represent the whole city. Political consultant Tom Shepard will join us to help understand what difference this could make to Oceanside.
For over 30 years, KOCT has been a community media resource. KOCT exists because of viewers like you who want and need to stay informed about their community. Only KOCT provides local election coverage and live airing of government meetings. Support this public service by making a tax-deductible donation today. It's easy. Go to koct.org, click on the donate button, make a monthly or a one-time donation. Help us help you stay informed about North County. Support your hometown television station today.
Tee off at the Oceanside Municipal Golf Course. Located minutes from downtown Oceanside, the Oceanside Golf Course showcases 18 holes, is open to all, with special consideration for Oceanside residents. Featuring an all-grass driving range, lessons and camps, a full-service grill, and spectacular views. The Oceanside Golf Course is an affordable option for a great day on the green. The course is open every day from 6 a.m. till sunset, located at 825 Douglas Drive. For best rates, book online today. Visit playoceansidegolf.com or call 760-433-1360.
Are you on the hunt for classroom space to teach a yoga class or to hold a meeting? El Corazon has you covered. Our classroom is 3,100 square feet, and retractable walls can create 4 smaller rooms to allow different activities to be in session at one time. A wide array of recreational activities, from fine arts to exercise classes, may be accommodated. Both the classroom and the attached outdoor patio are available for rentals 7 days a week. Let us know how many people are in your party, when you want to meet, and we'll have the room set to your needs. For more information and to schedule the facility, please email Parks and Rec Admin Facility Rentals or call 760-435-5533.
Did you know most men take better care of their cars than they do themselves? Nearly 26% of men 18 to 44 years old in the United States do not have a regular source of health care. Make an appointment today to ensure you stay healthy tomorrow. This message is brought to you by Tri-City Medical Center, advanced health care for you.
Welcome back to North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Alison St. John, and our next guest is longtime political consultant Tom Shepard. Now, Tom, you've had 30 years of experience as a political consultant in San Diego County, and you count among your clients former Mayor Jerry Sanders, Supervisor Bill Horn, and County Sheriff Bill Gore, some pretty big clients that you helped succeed. He also represented Supervisor Dave Roberts and former City Councilman Scott Peters, who's now a congressman. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
A lot of years of political experience, and we're going to talk about something that we were just talking earlier about, how this might be one of the biggest changes to local elections that we've seen in those 30 years, moving from citywide to district elections. And I think a lot of people in Oceanside are sort of peripherally aware of it, but I want to ask you, how big a deal do you think it is?
Well, the California Voting Rights Act, which is what has precipitated this move to district elections in cities, was originally intended to ensure that minority populations had an opportunity to elect their own representatives. And in many cities that have gone to district elections, it certainly had that impact, but it has other impacts as well that were not necessarily a part of the original legislation. The good news is, from a neighborhood perspective, it makes your council or other district representative more responsive to the needs of your neighborhood. They've got to go back and get your support when election time rolls around. The argument that is typically made against district elections is that it causes the representatives, in this case the council members, to lose sight of the bigger overall city objectives. That isn't the experience that, like San Diego, which went to district elections many years ago, I don't think that's been the effect there.
Although San Diego's so much bigger, I mean, like 1.3 million people, Oceanside, right. 175,000 approximately. Just to be clear, what this means is that 4 of the 5 city council members, not the mayor, but the others, will be elected just by individual districts. So it's a smaller number of people they represent, so they should be able to have a more direct connection with their
Correct.
Constituents. That's the theory, anyway.
Yeah, and another impact that it will have, or has had in other jurisdictions, is because the electorate that you're campaigning to is so much smaller, single district, it has a tendency to lower the cost of running for office, eliminates that barrier.
Well, that I think is pretty significant, because if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of resources, it becomes more likely that you can realistically run a campaign and win in a district. Is that
Correct.
right?
In a city, Oceanside's a relatively large city, and the truth is it would be very difficult for a council candidate to have direct contact with every voter in the city. When you're running in one of 4 districts, I think that it will become more and more important for candidates to actually do that. We'll go door to door and talk to every voter. And that definitely changes the dynamics of these elections.
Right. Now, Escondido went to district elections, the first of all the North County ones, back in 2013, I think it was. Have you noticed, I mean, do you think it's made any difference in terms of getting more diversity on the city council? I haven't seen that in Escondido.
Yeah, I don't think it has. I mean, the one Latina on the city council represents
Olga Diaz, yeah.
Represents a majority Anglo district, and the guy that represents what is theoretically at least a Latino district is an Anglo. So,
that theory may not hold true.
It doesn't hold true 100%, but over time, I think the experience is that to the extent that minority groups within a particular district get organized, they can exert significant control. That's certainly what has happened in the city of San Diego. So.
Well, I think that's really an important message that you've got then, is that in terms of organizing, and you are a political consultant who's been dealing with candidates, in terms of organizing, it might make it easier for a candidate to get elected, somebody who would not have done it if it had been a citywide election before.
Correct, and I think a consequence of going to district elections is that it encourages groups within a district to organize themselves and take advantage of their numeric advantage within a district. And so I think you'll see it's likely that you'll see groups that have been previously underrepresented getting more organized and taking more control.
Describe what you've seen in San Diego.
Well, in the city of San Diego, the 8th district, it has consistently elected Latinos. The 9th district is now doing that relatively consistently. The 4th district has consistently elected African American representatives, and so those voters have a representative.
And there's a district that has more Asian constituents, I believe.
And
that has
the 6th, and Chris Cate represents that.
Right, right. So you've seen it actually work in the case, and it took some time, perhaps.
Correct.
I mean, do you think that this is something that may not emerge immediately, like this year? It may not be something that will make that big a change, but over time, you think it could lead to a more diverse city council?
I think that has been the experience in other cities that have been at this for a while, yeah.
So, I mean, Oceanside's 26% Hispanic and less than 50% white at this point. Escondido was 49% Hispanic, much more, and yet they still don't seem to have more than one Hispanic on the city council. So it may be a slow process. But so what do you think? Setting aside, more diversity, what do you think the difference will be for the average voter, the average constituent?
Well, I think voters can expect to have, on the one hand, a lot more direct contact with their representative or a candidate to represent them. On the downside, voters that were accustomed to being able to vote for all 4 council members are going to discover when they go to the polling place that they only get to vote for one, and some voters will be unhappy with that.
That's what I've heard, is that some people are very unhappy that they can't vote for all of their city council members. So that's something you have to let go of. So that means you then have to get somebody that is going to be speaking for your interests. And I do have to wonder whether that will lead to a lot more conflict, because we've already got a problem with conflict on our city council.
It's hard to imagine there being more conflict than Oceanside already has.
I'm afraid so. But in this case, if you're representing a district and you want a swimming pool in your district and someone else wants it in theirs, this could create another whole level of who's going to get the investment in their district.
It could. That's the way it could work out. Another way I've seen it work out is it forces council members to develop relationships with their colleagues, because if they want something in their district, they got to figure out what they're going to give somebody else in another district in order to make that happen. So there is a premium placed on collaboration.
A bit more give and take. That's good, yeah. And the mayor of the city will still remain citywide. So do you think this in some ways makes the mayor's position more important?
I think so. The mayor, after all, will be the only elected official who represents the entire city, and I think that causes the mayor to have, just on the natural, play a more significant role in setting citywide policy. Many cities that have gone to district elections have then followed up with moving to a more of a strong mayor form of government for that reason.
There's a lot of other jurisdictions that are going to district elections as a result of these lawsuits,
right,
including Tri-City Hospital. I mean, it was hard enough to figure out who you were supposed to be voting for when they were at least representing the whole thing. But now, each one is going to be representing a small district. Maybe that will help. Maybe that will help to reduce that sense of distance from your representative, having smaller districts.
I think that's true. And the other big change I think you're going to see is, whereas in the past many candidates relied on mass communication, mail, social media, that's not going to cut it in a district election. They're going to have to go and talk to voters one-on-one.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting thought, because obviously, you know, you are somebody who's been helping people to win elections, and you've been watching the strategies become more and more sophisticated.
Right.
But in some ways, this is throwing us back to the sort of more original face-to-face campaigning.
That's what I've seen happen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good, hopefully, one good. So, in general, do you think that this is a positive change for cities in San Diego County?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the advantage, I think, becomes somewhat marginal in real small cities. But, excuse me.
Yes, like, I mean, Encinitas, for example, I know that they've said, you know, they've said it really wasn't worth it in their city, but they had to just because they were threatened with the lawsuit. And Poway also is a bit smaller and has been threatened with the lawsuit, and they've now taken it. I understand I think there's some kind of a lawsuit in Poway.
There is.
Do you think they stand a chance of overturning the decision?
That lawsuit's being funded by a national organization that thinks they can attack the Voting Rights Act. I don't know whether they'll succeed or not, but they view it as precedent setting.
It's a fairly right-wing organization. Is it the Heritage or one of those more right-wing organizations? Please have a cup of water, because I want to shift now to perhaps talking about some of the other races that are coming up in this very interesting election season. And why don't we sort of start at the top locally, which is Darrell Issa's seat, where he has announced that he's actually not going to run for that seat again.
Right.
And, you know, I wondered whether you feel like the Democrats, who were very much hoping to flip the seat and got started with campaigning quite early on that, whether his decision not to run has made their task easier or more difficult.
I think, in all likelihood, it's going to be more difficult for the Democrats, and the Democrats are also suffering from the fact that they have too many candidates in the race.
Yes. Although the Democrats have the same number of candidates as the Republicans, both parties have like 5 candidates, I believe.
The difference, though, is that the Republican Party has been much more effective at using the pre-primary endorsement to focus Republican voters on a single candidate. Democrats have not historically done as good a job of that, and that's going to be necessary here, I think, for the Democrats to avoid being shut out of
wiped out in the primary, right? Because we have a top 2 primary, so it's the top 2 vote getters. They might be 2 Republicans, they might be 2 Democrats.
That has happened.
And in this case, you've got Doug Applegate, who of course was the one that almost defeated Issa last year. We also have, on the Democratic side, there's Mike Levin, Paul Kerr, Sarah Jacobs, Christine Prejean. Do you think that the voters will go with name recognition or party endorsement, or what do you think will help Democrats to narrow down their focus?
Well, if the party can get its act together and do a pre-primary endorsement and follow that up with communication so voters know who they endorsed, I think they could have a major impact. Again, the Democratic Party has not had a great record of doing that in the past.
And the Republicans in this case, we have our own Oceanside's Rocky Chavez, who used to be a city council member here and has been an assembly member for a long time. He's thrown his hat into the ring. Diane Harkey from Orange County, Kristen Gasper, Brian Marriott, and Joshua Schoonover. Do you think that there's an issue about people in San Diego wanting a candidate from San Diego instead of from Orange County? Because ISIS district spreads from Orange County to San Diego. And you know, he endorsed Diane Harkey, a Republican, a very well-respected Republican, and the Republicans in San Diego said, oh no, what about Kristen Gaspar? So, I mean, do you think that geographical loyalties will play a role in this race too? Well,
they appeared to. In the last election, I believe that if not for the Orange County part of the district, Applegate would have prevailed last time.
He did win in San Diego, yes.
Right. But I don't know, there's so many candidates in the race this time, it's hard to figure out how any of that's going to break out. I think Harkey has an advantage in that she's quite well known in that section of southern Orange County.
That's right, yeah, it's kind of a little bit like herding cats. Okay, so there is in fact going to be some chance for the parties to endorse in that race at some point, and we'll see which of them come out. Rocky Chavez is perhaps, he's been serving up in Sacramento, and in fact he's crossed the line in some cases to work with the other party, so perhaps he's somebody who sees himself as being a little more centrist than some of the others. So
I think that's correct. The problem with that is that typically in a primary election, the ability to appeal to your partisan base is usually viewed as being important, and he may end up finding himself getting caught in the middle on that one.
And Kristen Gaspar, I mean, in a meteoric rise, she was the mayor of Encinitas, and then she got elected up to the County Board of Supervisors, and almost immediately she turns around and says that she's running for Congress. Do you think she's moving too fast, or do you think she's on a rapidly rising star?
That's not for me to judge. Open congressional seats don't come along very often, and I'm sure that was part of her calculus that if she didn't take advantage of it now, may never get another chance. I know that many of the people who supported her for supervisor are disappointed because they worked hard to get her elected, and she's now apparently preparing to leave.
Shifting, yeah. Were you surprised that ISA decided not to run again? Because the registration in that district is still predominantly Republican.
Yeah. You know, Darrell's problem is that that district overwhelmingly voted for Clinton over Trump, and that his close excuse me, his close connection to Trump, I think, was a major problem for him.
Okay. Yes, there were photographs of him laughing with Trump, which got shown at every occasion. That's right. Do you think he might jump to the 50th if something happens to Duncan Hunter? I wouldn't
count it out. Duncan Hunter is in serious trouble, and I think for the Republicans, the worst possible scenario there is that he survives the primary, Hunter, and then the Department of Justice comes down on him, and now they've got a fatally wounded candidate. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Hunter to get out before that happens.
So presumably that pressure is being applied as we speak, and we'll see if that happens before the June primary. Yes, and whether ISA decides to jump at that point. The date by which we know who's going to be running for all these races is like March 9th, right? At the moment, it feels like there's all kinds of people jumping into the races. But let's talk about the 76th Assembly, which is the one that Rocky Chavez, I assume, is letting go of now because he is going to be running for ISIS seat.
Well, we'll know by March 9th, won't we?
Well, Rocky Chavez has been known to drop out of a race after he's thrown his hat into the ring before. What are the chances that that might happen again?
I can't speculate on that, but we'll find out pretty soon.
Okay, all right. That district, the 76th Assembly that Rocky represents, has a registration that is very equal Democrat Republican. Right. I noticed it's still very marginally more Republican, but it could flip, yeah. But there are some good candidates, I think, lining up for that race. not many people know about assembly races. I mean, do you think it's interesting that people know so little about their state representatives and are much more focused on the local and the national?
Yeah, I mean, the issues that Sacramento deals with are not top of mind for most voters locally. Right. What has happened as a result of the top two primary, though, is that a lot of districts that have historically been so-called safe districts for one party or the other are not turning out to be that way anymore, and so we're getting a lot more competitive races, and we're getting this interesting phenomena of, in overwhelmingly Republican districts, moderate versus conservative Republicans duking it out, with both of them in the general election, and conversely pro-business Democrats and more liberal Democrats duking it out on the other side.
Right, instead of perhaps the more extremes, which is a good thing. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. Finally, you know, there's the race to replace Bill Horn, our county supervisor Bill Horn. Why do you think that race is getting so much less attention than the race to replace Ron Roberts, who represents the 4th district?
Well, I think that district, the 5th district that Horn has represented, has historically gotten less attention, partly because there isn't one big city like in San Diego where the district is almost entirely encompassed by the city. So the candidates tend not to be as well known. They're well known in their cities, like Jim Desmond is in San Marcos or Jerry Kern is in Oceanside, but it's very difficult for a candidate to become well known throughout the district. There's not a media presence or a cohesion that allows that to happen. So I think that's probably part of the explanation. And frankly, Jim Desmond and Jerry Kern, who are both very nice guys, are not as charismatic as some of the candidates that are running in the 4th district.
And they're both Republicans.
They're both Republicans.
Whereas in the 4th district we have a Democrat, Nathan Fletcher, which that would be setting a new trend on the Board of Supervisors.
Yes,
if a Democrat would get in, right?
Yes, it would.
I mean, don't you think that what's going to happen on the Board of Supervisors is one of the most interesting things to watch in the next few years?
Oh, absolutely, because Greg Cox will be termed out in 2 years in 2020, and that seat is almost certainly going to be electing a Democrat as well. So the board, which has been all Republican with a brief period there when Dave Roberts was in office, but for 25 years. So it'll be a big change.
Yes, that's going to be quite interesting. And of course, most people don't know what the county does, but perhaps they'll start to find out a little more as we get some more people running for those seats that have been held by the same people for like 24 years up until now.
That, to me, is a product of the fact that it's so difficult for candidates in districts that are that large, a challenger, to mount an effective campaign against an incumbent. But with open seats as a result of term limits, that's going to change.
So, do you think there's going to be record turnout this year? We've got 30 seconds left. This midterm is a lot of passions aroused.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure that out. You got to think with a contested gubernatorial primary and all these congressional races that are getting a lot of attention, that it'll be higher than normal midterms. But how much higher, I don't know.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for your reflections on these upcoming elections, which we will all need to start turning our attention to more in the coming months. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for watching this edition of North County Roundtable. And don't forget, you can watch or share this episode by going to koct.org. Be informed about your community by watching the North County Roundtable. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
KOCT program underwriters are not affiliated with the City of Oceanside. This program is underwritten in part by Waste Management of North County in Oceanside. We are dedicated to serving customers and community as a safe, comprehensive service provider, a good corporate citizen, and a responsible environmental steward. Think green. Think waste management.